Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Silver Tears Tarot, and welcome to a reading about folks who are in no contact or not meaningful contact. So, what I mean by that, I've had a couple of notes from people who have said, I am in absolutely zero contact, haven't had any communication in quite some time. This is the reading for you. Or if you came to me and you said, I work with this person, and I swear, if I didn't have to see them on a regular basis, I would not see hide nor hair of them. It's like they've forgotten I exist. And so let's take a look at what's happening in that energy. And of course, it'll be a reading for this collective, general reading that, it may not resonate with everybody and shouldn't resonate with everybody. But if it does resonate with you, take a look at some of the other readings because they're all so very connected. Just something that has kind of been the case since I first came out here. And it's really interesting the way that that's worked out. So sometimes today's reading will be like an extended for the previous day's reading. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I think this is going to be my primary deck. And we're looking at the energy around the two of you right now. So energy that's happening between you. You've got the Seven of Cups. So not understanding which direction to take and feeling a little bit, there's a feeling of an impasse here. The two of you are not seeing things the same way. This is where somebody is, and there are going to be different things here, but somebody is feeling like you left them and they had to respond. Or you were about to leave them and they had to respond. And maybe they've blocked you and there's no good way to talk about it. And tensions are high, but they misinterpreted, or there's kind of a different feeling from them as there is from you. Others of you, I would just say you guys are not seeing things the same way, but in a way that you don't know. Let's see, we got the King of Swords. Somebody felt like this was the best thing to do. But they're denying they're denying something about themselves in the process of denying you. So they are actively denying the situation. Just don't feel like they're ready to confront it right now. They're willing to put a lot of energy into not confronting the situation, but it also looks like it is wrapped around something that is ultimately a misunderstanding, but wouldn't be one that's easy to rectify at this point. I would even say there may be kind of an unwillingness to address it with them. There's a lot of strength in both of your opinions, so you both really feel like, no, clearly this is what happened, The other day, I had one of you come to me and say that your person had come back after several years and you actually were able to have a frank conversation. And it's interesting because you had spent those years feeling like something different had happened. And both of you were quite resolute in those opinions about what had happened. And in fact, it just really, it was amazing how much difference there was in the opinions and the perspectives around what had happened. There's a lot of a need to kind of resolve this right now. We might be seeing that coming through with the Mercury retrograde, but the thing is, it's also a little bit of a rehashing in their mind, and it ends up increasing this strength even more. So whatever they think happened, they think it even more as a result of this. So if you've got a misunderstanding, the size of it is not necessarily that the size of it is changing, because it's not necessarily that they are becoming that they're having different thoughts, just that they're feeling stronger in those thoughts. But there's also the ability to shift, the ability to maybe learn something new, take in new information differently. So there's healing that has happened, that if you have a conversation and try to have to rectify this misunderstanding, it could be a lot more successful now than it would have been when it first happened. So not even so much that somebody just wanted to be resistant, but just that they didn't have what it took to listen at that time or to hear it. Not necessarily that they couldn't listen, but they weren't going to be able to interpret it. They were never going to be able to get it right, even if you use the exact right words. There's greater masculine energy between the two of you now. So this is a place that had kind of been lacking, even though one of you is playing the role of the divine masculine and one of you is playing the role of the divine feminine. Both of you contain both of those energies. And it was that masculine energy that was kind of faltering with both of you at the time. That's energy that is part of that feminine energy nurtures you and that masculine energy protects you a little bit, and you need both, and they both come from within you, but that protection energy was really sort of lacking in both of you. And not necessarily that there was a tendency not to protect or an inability to protect, it's just the balance of that energy, the way that it was coming out, the way that it was manifesting might have needed some adjustment. Might come through too forceful on certain things where finesse would make more sense, and you get that now. There's something here that has shifted that will make this conversation different. And I also see that with the Eight of Pentacles. So it's an interesting energy that has shifted between you, despite the fact that it looks like it's based in some misunderstanding and kind of fearful moving away from denying one's their ability. I think it's more on their side, denying that movement toward the lessons and the truth. So you've got this Seven of Cups coming out again here in the reverse to talk about the size of this misunderstanding and the increasing strength of it. So just a little bit of a heads up to you. You are going to need to bring your most diplomatic communication if you do end up in communication with this person, which we know in this energy, this is, if it's going to happen, this is when it happens. The last time we had energy that felt like this, that was when I got the messages from people that said it's been years and I never thought I'd hear from this person. It's a complete surprise, but it was a disappointment, because they were unhealed. So they are, according to readings as recent as yesterday, they're still unhealed, but the healing has begun. There is a lot here that could change things between the two of you. So if you are to have a conversation, and we'll look to see whether or not you should initiate that as we get into the areas of your focus. But for now, what I would say is if you are to have a communication, then it probably makes sense to just be very aware. Diplomacy is going to be your friend. There is some change, but there is still pretty rampant misunderstanding. And that rampant misunderstanding is also likely to lead to, this is the Nine of Wands is a lot of resistance. The Ace of Wands in the reverse is self-destructive behavior. And the form that self-destructive behavior takes is really like choosing to hide in the misunderstanding instead of allowing yourself to see it differently. So if, for example, they are misunderstanding something, you are able to have the communication about it to let them know, hey, that this is different from the way that you had interpreted it. Can we talk about that? They may still choose to feel upset about it for a little while. And there is really not very much that you'll be able to do about that, but it could be very frustrating. So we have the Lover's card and the Queen of Wands. And the Lover's card is, honestly, it's very much about the bond that the two of you share. That bond has by no means shifted or gone away, But with the Queen of Wands here, there's an egoistic need to ensure you have, it's almost like there's a need for control in this bond. And that's what makes it a little bit tough. It makes it a little bit tough to come to a place of agreement, partially because there's almost an egoistic need to be right. And that I feel exists a little bit more on their side, where you have moved past that, but maybe relying a little bit, or not relying, leaning a little bit too heavily in the direction of feeling like you need this person to come back, when really it's that misunderstanding that probably needs to be cleared up more than anything else. There's also, you can't necessarily control how quickly that happens. They, especially not with the way that their attitude seems to be shifting, or the way their attitude seems to be lifting. They're disinclined to reach out because they think something that would tend to make them feel less likely to reach out. But they have this push to reach out. They don't have a push to understand better. They think they already understand. So that's a little bit of a difference between the two of you. But it could still result in something positive. The problem is that with this Queen of Pentacles here in the reverse, there's a little bit of a self-worth issue that needs to be resolved. And it's really, I feel like that is shared energy on both sides. The fact that things were difficult between the two of you has created some challenging feelings on both sides that have resulted in both of you feeling like, things are different from the way that I thought they were, and I haven't recovered from that yet. I really thought this was going to be a different type of situation than it ended up being. And I hear that from you guys sometimes. So I hear the Three of Wands in the reverse. Three of Wands in the reverse is all about feeling that sense of doubt it's the same thing that I'm feeling with the Queen of Pentacles, only it's a little bit more specific. So it's like there with the Queen of Pentacles, there's a feeling of questioning self-worth, not so much low self-worth, questioning self-worth. And so then with the Three of Wands, I feel like it's questioning whether you're prepared, or whether you were prepared, or whether you have sufficiently prepared someone else. But the thing is, in this case, the thing about preparing someone else is that this is preparation that you wouldn't be able to impact. So it's not a preparation that you could give them. It's something that they would have to come across that preparation by themselves, or your assistance actually kind of pushes them away from the answer a little bit because of the nature of the bond that you share. It isn't because they don't love you. It's because the nature of the bond makes it very difficult for them to learn certain lessons in your presence, to even admit some of those learnings to you. It's complicated. Let's look a little bit more into kind of what's happening along the lines of this, a little bit more into what's happening. Hopefully to come out here also, we see a little bit of how they are feeling about it. If we don't get into that, then we'll dig into it a little bit farther when we get into the extended. But what else do you need to know? What else is going on with this? Because you have a person who may well reach out. And it would be for the first time in quite some time, and probably a bit of a surprise. But it would also be, it could be a little bit of a challenge because it looks like they're perceiving things differently than you are. So let's look a little bit more deeply into that. And then we'll look into where you need to focus, and with that, what your actions are recommended to be. Okay, so you've got a Ten of Pentacles. Here's somebody who has lost faith in something. They've lost faith in something ever being as beautiful as what they had hoped that it could be. That is totally vague and just the words that I'm supposed to say. King of Cups, there's an extreme emotional limitation because of a perception of something that happened. They perceived something, in some cases they perceived too much of an effort to control, and they balked at that and they didn't feel like they could handle continuing to be in that situation. And yet you've really delivered something to them in the form of, we talk about that ancient pain and the pain from childhood that is unresolved. You've delivered something as far as resolution to some of that pain. And this is part of the reason that they can't forget about you. Like you have not been able to shake the energy of them, partially because they can't forget about you because you've changed things for them. So that's part of why you're unable to release that experience as well. You're sitting here at the precipice of releasing the situation, but it's not happening. So you're at the 10. The 10s are the complete and total end before a new cycle begins And so when you've got it in reverse like this, it's not quite getting over the hump. There's something here that still needs to be addressed. But with this loss of, here's the thing, 10 of Pentacles is a material world. And so for it to be a loss of faith is a definite cross of functions, you know? And with this 10 of Swords in the reverse, like this is the reason that you guys are so tightly bonded. You're here to resolve with this bond, with this lover's bond. You're here to resolve some things that have brought you down, whether they brought you down from within this lifetime or they were brought to you from your ancestral pain, in the form of values is how I typically say it. Things that you were taught to feel a certain way or that should be a certain way have caused you to maybe try and control things a certain way. And that's what I feel like they've balked out here. But that's where the misunderstanding lies, because you didn't mean it the same way. However, there is a very real need for energy to be equal and balanced. Balanced is the most important thing here. So with the Six of Pentacles in the reverse, what we see is that they've not invested in this bond in the same way that you have. And that's creating an imbalance here that also is difficult to address. And so this is something that would have to be resolved here with that Seven of Cups, that area of misunderstanding that seems like as they feel pushed in your direction, they feel even more cemented in their views of what has gone wrong, but they don't realize how much they haven't given you the same energy you've given them. With the King of Pentacles, there's a feeling of not necessarily deserving it. So be aware that the places where that masculine energy was out of balance, which that can lead to a need to control or a perception of being controlled. It's about control issues, but it's not always necessarily going to be clean cut. So it's not necessarily going to be that you have one person who's really controlling and you have somebody who's not. Sometimes you have someone whose perception of how they might have an issue, a trigger area around feeling as if someone is trying to control them. You don't have to work too hard to trigger that. You don't have to control too hard to trigger that. So be aware that could be the sort of thing that's causing this misunderstanding. And also be aware, if they reach out during a Mercury retrograde, the conversation could be difficult to interpret because of the Mercury retrograde. So I don't know if having them reach out is truly the best thing in this time frame. It kind of depends on your ability to be gentle, like we've seen in previous readings, and to honor what you're learning there, and really there's a lot of a need to listen and be aware of one another. We have the Knight of Wands, which kind of represents that need for them to come back in your direction that we've been seeing it. High Priestess and the King of Cups. High Priestess, once again, they've got a constant push. This is where some of the dreams are coming from. They've got this constant push in your direction to do something and to reach out, but a lot of desire to keep it quiet. And so this King of Cups is almost the perception of, or it's almost the energy of, yeah, okay, I can reach out, but I don't think that I'm going to be very vulnerable. There's a lack of vulnerability in them, such that you get such an unhealed version of them at this time if they reach out, that you might get the wrong idea about the amount of progress that they've made. So they're moving incredibly slowly at this time. What I like, though, is that this Ace of Pentacles is in the upright, because it does suggest that they will ultimately get where they... Oh, okay. Let's see here. They will ultimately get where they need to go. I thought I had captured them all, but I hadn't, so I'm glad this came out. And it's an important message, too, because this is the Four of Wands in the reverse, and it's all about having that stability. This is something your person really has lacked stability or a perception of stability at some point in the past. It's part of what made up this ancient pain. So you got to be careful, because that's another area of triggering for them. And they don't really, they lack certain abilities to partner or work as a team, or like work on something with you. So it doesn't matter if it's 2 people or 3 people, or, that's not necessarily what matters, as much as they just kind of never built a certain skill, because they relied so heavily upon like a need for getting stable. Once they are stable, then they tend to get into a rut. They tend to be very easy to talk into remaining stable. But when they are unstable, things become they change quickly. We've got the Ten of Wands. So here's the thing. They're in a situation right now where they're grasping on to the stability, but the stability is not necessarily doing them any favors. And especially neither is their inability to work with people or to partner especially well. So here's somebody who still has some things to learn about partnering, about working well with others, and it might benefit you to be aware of this if you happen to come in contact with them, because it may be that they're still not great at certain things. You may find that they accuse you. They still there's a lot of this feeling of control. Like, it's like a situation where maybe this is somebody who likes to be in control and actually displays a narcissistic tendency or two. And maybe in some cases that's a little bit of an understatement. I understand that's not going to be everybody. But somebody who actually feels like they are being manipulated in the situation somehow, or and I wonder if they're admitting that to themselves. I'm not entirely sure. That's a far out concept, but it almost feels like it's a deep down concept. I'm curious to understand how that translates in with the way that we've seen that they feel about you. I think we'll continue looking into that as we get into the extended, because this is really it's interesting. They've got a lack of skills over here that they don't even realize is kind of a soft spot in their skill set, and that is part of the reason why with the Six of Pentacles they're not quite able to realize how they have shortchanged you in this situation. So that's part of why they haven't gone on this quest yet. It's a matter of not quite realizing, not quite having characterized the problem, and so they've got some lessons to learn. And as we typically see, the answers are in front of them, but this is making it abundantly clear they're not sure how to interpret those answers. And so I think this is interesting because we really zoomed in on the element of lack of communication. And I think we got a a little bit better of an understanding of kind of what is behind the fear that we typically see pop up. So we'll look a little bit more when we get into the extended with, how are they feeling about you and about the situation given what we're seeing here. But first, let's look into your advice. Where should you be focusing, and what should you be doing at this time? I know a couple of you are curious about, should I attempt to contact? Should I not? This is a time for you to reflect. So there is good energy, and we've seen that in other readings, but this is good time for you to reflect on some of what has happened in your life and continue to put some of your boundless energy into the direction of something that is work related, that is hobby related, that is volunteer related. Like, give of yourself to something, whether it is your workplace or it could be your social life, but it's not a person. This is definitely a feeling of giving to yourself, that in a way, or giving of yourself in a way that benefits a community in some way. And that could be your work that you do, that could be some sort of community outreach. And this time of year, there are a lot of opportunities that are out there for this, but this is a recommendation to really redirect yourself in a way that has you reflecting on your situation right now. Include this in your reflection. Include this situation in your reflection, but definitely with that the Knight of Wands, it's about moving in a direction of passion, something that moves you, but it's giving yourself over to some sort of energy that benefits the community and takes you out of yourself. There's a need for you to come out of yourself at this time. And the Knight of Swords, one of the things that we see, so that's a Knight of Swords in the reverse. You may find some resistance to that feeling of coming out of yourself or redirecting yourself away from this focus. It's almost like you'll have like a fear of not thinking about this. Like you're afraid that this person is going to forget about you. Sorry, I dropped one. If you stop focusing as heavily on them, that is not That is not something that you really would need to worry about in this energy. They are unable to shake it as well. And they're unable to really progress until they find some solutions within themselves. You are being told in no uncertain terms to focus on something passionate. Focus on something passionate. Don't spend your time thinking and overthinking something that it is now clear it involves a misunderstanding. So get yourself to the broad strokes so that if you have an opportunity to communicate with them, you don't immediately get into the weeds. That you spend less time in the details and more time saying, I felt like you just left me, rather than remember this one day where this one thing happened, where their perception, that's for later in the conversation, maybe. Let's just say that. So there's not a lot of benefit to overthinking it at this time, or even at any point in time. You're being encouraged to be aware of when you have a tendency to move toward that, and think about the effect that it has on you and your mood. With the Queen of Swords, there are going to be some other things that have to be like forcibly removed is the opposite of what needs to happen from your life. They need to be removed from your life, but not forcibly. It's more a matter of just no longer giving them energy. This is not about your person. This is something different that it's associated lessons, but it's about you being able to relinquish something that actually is, again, going to feel like some type of control. It's going to feel like a need to control, a need to be aware or to know something, like to know the timing of when a person is going to get back to you and say, well, when am I going to hear from this person? That is exactly the sort of thing that you want to release in this energy, and the sort of thing that you want to reflect on. But really not spend too much time thinking about. With the Five of Swords in the reverse, this is about exactly like we were just saying. It's relinquishing that need to know exactly when they're going to reach out. It's definitely making a habit of focusing on something different. But it turns out that is a tough thing to do, particularly when the bond is that strong and there has been no communication. Sometimes we find ourselves it's really difficult to let that habit go of thinking of them on a regular basis. This is the sort of redirection that will help that to happen. And you may need a couple of tries to get it going, and your mind may come back to them in the quiet times. When it does, make sure that you're incorporating some of the lessons that you're also learning. You got the Four of Pentacles here. It's a need to let some things go, but it feels a lot like that same need to let go of the outcome, let go of to release the outcome, expectations around the outcome, or assumptions around the outcome. So also not not thinking too deeply about whether your person has written you off. I mean, that's something that's a very real concern for some of you. And this is more a matter of saying, I can't make assumptions about that. And it's better not to have expectations about it, because it limits the possibilities. There's a need to be patient, but also a recognition that that is not something that happens overnight. The temperance is about a hard-won balance that comes in over time. And sometimes this is part of the process that has to happen. There's a need to not say yes to everything. So you're being told to refocus some of your energy, but be discerning about the direction you go. Don't say yes to everything. There's definitely more opportunity out there than you're going to be able to fit in. And if you realize also that in a lot of recent readings, we've gotten cards around burnout. Just be aware that you can't do all of the things that come to you. So be careful not to go too far in the other direction where you feel like, okay, I got to do it all to get this person out of my mind. You got the Nine of Pentacles. Ooh, I love this one. This is about putting yourself into a situation that feels a little outside your comfort zone, which is advice that I've given you in the cards and personally here lately. But definitely, this is kind of a reinforcement for that, that you can't do everything, but make sure that you select something with enough challenge to it that you do get kind of put outside your comfort zone. But make good decisions for your household, for your family, whatever that means for you and your unique situations. Make sure that you are beginning with the end in mind and thinking carefully about the impacts of your actions, not just on the situation with this person, but also on the rest of your life. So, this is a time of reflection, but not of overthinking, and to take some, there's passion that you can have not just in giving yourself to the community, but also in, giving yourself to an effort like a workout. Make sure that you're allowing yourself the time for those sorts of things, the meditation, the workout, the putting yourself into your job or your community or volunteer work, whatever form that takes for you. Let it really shine from you. And go ahead and get into that place that's outside your comfort zone. Let yourself build something and let this flame grow, because that's really kind of the energy that, if we look at the rest of the readings, is happening around you across the course of this year. And it looks like in 2024 you have that option to really just kind of hit the ground running. Of course, we'll look a little bit more at that as we go. As we go into the extended for this one, I feel like we need to look a little bit more deeply into, given the fact that there is a significant misunderstanding for some folks, how is this weighing into their emotions and how they're feeling about not just you, but about the situation. I feel like we'll ask about that. So that's where we'll start when we get into the extended. Thank you for being here with me. If you'd like to go to the extended, please just scroll down. It's in the information beneath the video. You'll see the link there. If not, then I'll see you again in tomorrow's reading.